As I mentioned in my last vocab video, this past Saturday, July 26th, was National Aunt and Uncle's Day, but it was also National Cowboy Day. So to honor the cowboys, today I am talking about the shoresh Bet Kof Resh. Shalom and welcome back to Hebrew Vocab Boost. I'm Sapir and today I am talking about the shoresh Bet Kof Resh. Now this is a shoresh that has a lot of different meanings and I don't see any kind of a relationship between them. If somebody else has some insight into a relationship, I'd love to see it. So the two main meanings from the Tanakh are cattle and mourning. And between these two meanings, these words make up more than 98% of the words from this shoresh in the Tanakh. So these two are just about evenly split. It seems like the others are hardly even worth mentioning, but one or two of them have developed into modern words that we do use a lot. So I will mention them. So beyond cattle and mourning, we have the idea of seeking or looking for something, and this has 4 mentions in the Tanakh. And then these last 3 only have 1 mention each, and we have the idea of giving thought or reflecting. Giving thought is how the JPS translates it. And then we have frequenting or like visiting often. And then lastly, we have an obligation to pay. And as I mentioned, they're a little bit tough to reconcile where this comes from when there's a meaning that only exists once in the Tanakh. You know, a lot of times the JPS will say the meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain because, of course, this meaning, it can't mean any of the other normal meanings in this sentence because they just don't fit. But it also, it's the only one, so it is hard to know exactly what the meaning of it was. So most Hebrew learners are aware that Hebrew was spoken in biblical times, and then for about 2,000 years it was considered to be a dead language, and in that it was not anybody's native language until the late 1800s, early 1900s, when Eliezer ben Yehuda did his thing and revived it. But during those 2,000 years, Hebrew was not only used for prayer. There were a lot of commentaries on the Tanakh, on how Jews are supposed to live, on all kinds of different stuff that was done in Hebrew because that was the one language that we all had in common. And because of this, Hebrew did continue to evolve and grow as new concepts were introduced into life. These commentators would create new words. So it was never a completely dead language. And I mention this because there is one modern meaning of this shoresh that is difficult to trace back to the Tanakh. And part of this is because there are 4 basic meanings in modern times, but there were 6 in biblical times. And so we've got like a 1-to-1 matchup between 3 of them. And then this last one, where does it come from? Which original meaning was it? Or was it out of the blue? I mean, it's really unlikely that this new meaning they decided to give it this shoresh out of the blue. There is a reason for it. And often if you trace a meaning throughout the millennia, you can slowly, gradually see the change. But if you're just looking at the Tanakh and then looking at modern times, it's not so easy to see. And I don't have the time to go through, all of the various commentaries and all of the meanings throughout the ages. So sometimes we just have to leave the connection between the modern word and the biblical meanings as a mystery. So because it was Cowboy Day, we're going to start off with the cowboy meanings. So in the JPS version of the Tanakh, bakar is most often translated as cattle, oxen, or herds. One ox is shor. It's a completely different word from a different shoresh. So when I talk about oxen, it's like the group of animals as a whole. And today in modern times, bakar usually gets translated as cattle. And now onto our cowboys and cowgirls. Here we have a word that on the surface looks like it means morning. It looks like boker, morning. But look at this vowel. This is a tsere, not a segol. And so it's not boker, it's boker. The stress is on the second syllable. And a female, a cowgirl, is a bokeret. And believe it or not, the masculine version of this word is mentioned once in the Tanakh, and they say it means a cattle breeder. It was in the book of Amos. And the Academia's website shows that there is a related word, bokrut, but it doesn't give any other information about it. It's clearly a feminine noun, and to me it looks like the idea of cattle breeding or cattle herding. Like if you wanted to say people involved in cattle herding, if you were talking about that cattle herding, right, as an activity, bokrut. To me, that's what it looks like. Bokrut would mean the activity of cattle herding. There is a kibbutz in the Negev called Sde Boker, and it is famous for being the retirement home of David Ben Gurion, Israel's first prime minister. So when I first saw this word, I thought, oh, Sde Boker, like a morning field, a field that's pleasant in the morning, or that for whatever reason you're there in the morning. But no, it's Sde Boker, which is like a field of herding. And that makes more sense. And this brings us to our second meaning, which is morning, the early part of the day. And so we have this word, which is boker. And now, of course, we put the stress on the second to last syllable, which in this case is the first syllable. And we do that because of this segol. Hebrew words don't so much have rules about stress, more as like really strong suggestions. So the words tend to have the stress on the very last syllable, except when there is a segol as the last vowel, and then the stress tends to be on the second to last syllable. But these rules are definitely not hard and fast. There's all kinds of times when the rules get broken, and there's all kinds of minimal pairs in Hebrew where you've got two words that look exactly the same. They look the same, they're spelled the same, and the only difference is that the stress is either on one syllable or on the other. And so because of that segol, the word that means morning is pronounced boker. But there's another difference. In traditional spelling, this word is actually spelled without the vav. All throughout the Tanakh, it is spelled with a cholam chaser. But we live in modern times, and we use modern spellings, and of course, as adults, we don't use nikud. And so the words boker and boker are both spelled with a vav, and they look exactly the same. And so you basically just have to use context to determine which one it is. And I think In modern times, boker, meaning morning, is way more common than boker, cowboys and cowgirls. How often are we talking about cowboys? So boker means morning, the early part of the day, but it also means daybreak, like dawn, the very moment that the sun starts peeking out. And that it is translated that way often in the Tanakh. So if we put this hey on the front, it can be, I'm not sure if it's always considered hey hayediyah. I'm not 100% sure on the terminology, but this hey can be the hey hayediyah that means the definite article. So haboker can mean the morning, but more commonly it means this morning. So I can say something like haboker achalti betzim. This morning I ate eggs. And speaking of eating in the morning, we have aruchat boker, which means breakfast. Of course, I talked about this just a few weeks ago when I was doing the shoresh aleph resh chet, and now I'm doing the second part of it, bet kof resh. And so arucha just literally means meal, and with the taf on the end, that tells you it's a smichut form, so it's a meal of the morning. The meal of the morning is breakfast. And what do Americans often eat for breakfast? Digne boker. This means cereal, like what you would buy in the box. Cheerios, corn pops, corn flakes, whatever it is. That's how you would say it. Digne boker. This is a plural smichut form of the word dagan, which means cereal more in the sense of like grains, and then boker, like morning. So when you say cereal, like the box of cereal that you can buy, you're literally saying morning grains. But don't expect to hear Israelis talking about this. They do not eat cereal for breakfast. They eat salad. And of course, if you want to say good morning, you say boker tov. Boker tov. Of course, the tov always comes at the end when you're saying good whatever. Good morning, good day, good evening. The tov always comes at the end. Boker tov, good morning. And lastly, with regard to morning, we have the term lifnot boker, which refers to the early hours of the morning just before dawn. And lifnot is a special version of the word lifnei, which means before. And so to my American mind, I think before morning, well, that's the night before. But remember, I said that boker can also be daybreak or dawn. And so that's the boker in this phrase. So it's lifnot boker, before the dawn or before daybreak. So those last couple of hours, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, right before the sun is rising, depending, the hour changes depending on the time of the year. All right, moving on. Levaker is a PL verb, and it means to visit. And this meaning shows up once in the Tanakh. It's in Psalms. And the JPS translates it as to frequent, as in to visit a place frequently. So if you're visiting a place, you're going to use the preposition be with levaker. So if I want to say I visited Eilat, I would say bikarti be'Eilat. But if you're visiting a person, I've been told that technically you should use the preposition etzel. So bikarti etzel hachorim sheli. I visited my parents. So levaker also means to criticize, and I've heard some teachers say that if you say bikarti et hachorim sheli, that literally means I criticized my parents, not I visited them. But I do hear Israelis say bikarti et hachorim sheli or bikarti et whoever all the time, and they mean I visited. I think really the context goes a long way here. Are you talking about visiting somebody? Are you gonna now describe your visit and how lovely it was, or are you gonna start telling me all about your parents' faults? So whether you use the preposition etzel or the preposition et is not the defining factor that some teachers make it out to be. All right, and now we've got a noun, bikur, which means a visit, and it's a masculine noun, and it follows really the pattern of a PL shem peula, the verbal noun, but it just means a visit. All right, and now we're on to the meanings whose origins are murky. So as I just mentioned, levaker, the PL verb, everything about it is the same as levaker, the verb meaning to visit, only now it means to criticize. It can also mean like to critique, so not necessarily in a bad way, right? It can mean just to give like an honest kind of lengthy discussion about something, usually like a work of literature or something like that. And when you're using it to mean to criticize or to critique or anything like this, it definitely has the preposition et. Now, bikoret is a noun. We can tell it's a feminine noun because it ends in a taf, and it means a criticism or a critique or an examination. Whenever I talk to my Israeli friends about my book reviews, I always use this word because I can't remember the actual word that means book review. And then they always tell me, no, what you do is not a bikoret, because a bikoret is generally something more, it's either something completely negative or it's something like I said, like a literary critique. It's a long and lengthy and academic, and you're really getting into the nitty gritty of the style and the vocabulary and, you know, all kinds of things that I don't know about because that's not what I do. So yeah, my book reviews are not a bikoret. So Pehalim.com says that this word bikoret can also mean a visit, but the Academia does not list this definition on their website as one of the definitions. And whenever I hear people talking about a visit, I always just hear them say bikur. Bikorti is an adjective meaning critical or picky. Someone who criticizes so much that they're going to be picky about it. And before you can critique something, you have to inspect it. So we have a couple of words talking about inspecting or controlling. So here we have bakara. It's a feminine noun. And of course, we can tell that by the fact that it ends in a kamatse. And this means inspection, control, or supervision. And bakar, now it looks like the same word as the word that means cattle. It is slightly different only because it has different nikud, but of course we don't normally write with nikud, we don't normally read with nikud, and of course the patach and the kamat sound exactly the same, so they do sound exactly the same, these two words. But this bakar means inspector, supervisor, or controller. And so if we use it in the sense of an inspector or a supervisor, these are people, right? And so we also have a feminine version, bakarit. So bakar is a male supervisor or inspector, and bakarit is a female supervisor or inspector. But when we talk about it in the sense of a controller, this is some kind of a device, like a machine or a device or a component that is controlling what's going on in a system. And so in this sense, it's only used in the masculine, bakar. All right, folks, that is it. Now you know everything there is to know about the shoresh Bet Kof Resh. As always, if you have any questions or feedback, please leave it in the comments. Hit like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to see more. Lehitraot bapa'am haba'a. See you next time.